I'm a surgeon and I'm going to end up on my own table. Losing weight and being healthy is the number one New Year's resolution. Only 9% of people make it at the end of the year. For a lot of people, when I talk to them about carnivore, and the same with my friends, and in fact a lot of the community, it's like their brain goes, it's too far and just shuts down, and we can't even have a conversation. I mean, the only cons I had were Joe Rogan talked about it on one of his podcasts, which was he needed a new definition for diarrhea. Some of the programming on the plant stuff is so strong. Well, they've had decades of being told. I mean, a lot of them still think the food pyramid makes sense. And I'm like, well, if you just look at it, it's basically 80% carbohydrates. So, you're destined to be fat as.
Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Welcome, everybody. David Poole is our guest today. He's coming down from the down under in New Zealand. As I said, the Aotearoa, as the Maoris will call it, the land of the long white cloud. Auckland, New Zealand, beautiful part of the world. Thanks for doing this. Maybe we'll start with you just kind of giving a quick intro on who you are and what you do.
Well, firstly, Shawn, I need to thank you, mate, because you have been such an inspiration for me. And not just me. I notice how many people you inspire, and I notice how generous you are with your time. So I'd like to thank you from me, but also all the people that you invest in. You've had Dr. Bart Kay on your show. I saw you did some work with Max German and Steak and Butter Gal the other day. So, yeah, you really help us, mate. And you inspired me. So I took 6 months out to write a book because I saw one of your shorts and you said, we've all got to get some balls. So I thought I'll get some ShawnBaker balls on me and I'll go and write a book. So I stopped work and I wrote a book for 6 months. And I guess my context is I would like to be part of this community. I'd like to help the community, get the message out to more people because it can be hard. I don't know whether you guys have noticed, but sometimes no matter how much facts you have and no matter how good you look, even some of my friends just still don't believe me. They're like, well, when are you going to die? Or when are you going to get scurvy? It's like, it hasn't happened yet.
Funny enough, I was just informed I died again the other day. I was just kind of funny on social media. I always get these things where I'm dead. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I guess I died again. So yeah, still here so far. So thankfully.
So, yeah, I guess the backstory for me was back in 2011, I got cancer, which I've recovered from, but it was one of those, I don't know, you could have come to Jesus moments where you have to wake up, and some people don't wake up. I did wake up and I went, right, so unconsciously I need to start investigating why this happened and, what's the cause. So my book's called Mind, Body, Diet, and I didn't realize at the time what I started focusing on was what do I have to do in terms of my mental health, what do I have to do in terms of my exercise, and what I have to do in terms of my diet. So I got to you at the end, which was interesting, thank God. But I've spent the last 14 years, so I've done 14 years of personal development. Guys like Dr. John DeMartini, senior graduate of Landmark Forum, senior graduate of The Journey, Peter Sage, Anthony Robbins, all these kind of guys. So kind of got the mind bit sorted away. I then got into endurance sport. You can probably see one of my bikes on the wall. I call it bike porn. Trying to get that fitness part and trying to get my weight down. Problem I found was it worked, but I had to do 13 hours of training plus a week, which, wasn't sustainable. So that led me to diet. And I literally started at vegan because that was the roaring answer. But because of the training, I guess it forced me to notice what was working and what wasn't working. So I rapidly ended up vegetarian, then I ended up pescatarian, then I ended up having some bacon, and that just ruined me. And I started then, Pete Evans appeared with paleo. So we got into paleo. He was really big in Australia and New Zealand. I started feeling better. I started having to exercise less and manage my weight. Then I got into keto. And of course, each stage you're getting rid of more and more different food groups, but feeling better and better. And then I think it was a Pete Evans interview. I saw you on it. And it was a bit of a shock to my brain. And I guess this is part of my aha moment around writing the book, was even though I'd taken that 14-year journey and I was so close. I mean, I remember doing Aitken's diet back in like the 90s. I'm being told I was going to die then. But something about what you were saying and your story particularly, because I'm a 1967 kid as well, mate. So, you know, when you were saying, I'm a surgeon and I'm going to end up on my own table, it was that kind of really, really resonated for me. And I thought, I've got to try this thing. And the results have just been next level. So I sat there and then I had this experience. Tell me if I'm rambling, mate, but, you know, it's all good. I was on a Zoom seminar, and I've been on two of them. One of them had 80,000 people on the Zoom seminar, and the third day was about health. And it basically said, if you eat red meat, you're going to die, and it makes your body super acidic, and you should all be vegans. And I was like, this just can't stand. This is not right. And then I was on another one with over 1 million people on Zoom. The CEO of Zoom had to do some special service for it, and the same message was coming out. I was like, oh my God, we've got to do something. So that's what triggered me to write the book, because the purpose of the book is to help people. You know, I've come from a coaching background, so my purpose is to lead and pace people towards their own conclusion that carnivore keto is the best option, but I'm not forcing them to do it. So that's why I purposely start with the mental diet, the mind diet first, and then the body, and then I get to the actual eating diet last. And in the book, I even go through a complete matrix of here's all the possible options and here's the outcomes, you know, make your own mind up. So that's a sort of bit of a synopsis of how I got there.
So let me just, I guess, delve into some of that, the mind diet. What do you mean by that? How does that, I have a concept of what I think it might mean, but maybe you can explain more in detail.
I guess it's turning willpower into reality, you know, because some of the research I found was saying that losing weight and being healthy is the number one New Year's resolution, and only 9% of people make it at the end of the year. 23% give up in the first 2 weeks, and 66% give up in the first 2 months. So that isn't enough time for diet and exercise to really make any, you know, massive difference. So, and I've noticed with a lot of my friends, even carnivore friends, they can't stay on the diet. They don't have enough willpower. So the idea was, I've got some models that people can go through, and they build their big whys. Like they actually have to have an emotional experience about. And typically the why is not about them, it's about somebody else. So it's about their kids, or it's about, for me, it was about some of my friends not dying, you know. I have to show the way on this diet. So every time I had a moment I felt like my willpower was weak, it was like, I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing it for my friends. And part of the purpose is this, like, how can I write a book and then not stick to it? So the idea is to get their mind in a better place. And also I do a lot of pre-framing around, you know, one of the chapters is called You're Not Fat. So stop identifying as a fat person. You're a normal person carrying too much energy storage, you know. That's not who you are. In fact, if you meditate, it's almost impossible to feel your fat on your body. And then I do it's not your fault you're fat chapter. So I start from the 1950s and go right through the fat sugar war and all of the different kinds of diets and the food pyramid, which is bollocks. So I'm trying to pace them towards, by the time they get to exercise and body, I then talk about that's not about losing weight. That's actually about structural integrity and, you know, use it or lose it. Does that help on the mind part?
Yeah, I mean, it's an overview for sure. I mean, obviously, you know, what you said about, you know, having sort of willpower, or you think you have the desire to do something, and what prevents you from taking action or being successful. That's always.
Yeah.
I mean, we often say knowledge is power, but it doesn't need always lead to power. A lot of times it's inactivity, or sometimes people are paralyzed by knowledge because they think they have too much
Yeah.
knowledge. And so,
Yeah.
so how do you? I mean, well, let me ask you. You said you took a year off of work or 6 months off to write. What did you do normally?
I've just got a online retail business. Yeah. So
Okay,
and then I've
so
been in large corporate multinationals my whole life, but just
So
this was a
nothing in the
calling.
health or the mind or the mental or physical health space prior to this.
Not physical health, but 14 years of. So I did a lot of personal coaching and business coaching with a company called Sherlaws International, and then of course I've done 14 years of personal development, which is mainly about your mind. So I'm bringing that. What I noticed was I would be in these massive groups of people doing personal development, and they're all fat, and they didn't
Well,
want to
maybe
talk
that's why
about it.
they're there. Maybe they have development to do, and that's one
But they never
aspect. Right?
talked about being fat. It was like this topic, and that's why I've got that kind of where is it over there, that circular system, because they reinforce each other. So it's like a virtuous circle. If you get your mind in the right state, you feel better. Then you start exercising, so you physically feel better. You eat better, so your hormones get more in shape. So your mind feels, it's a versus the opposite way.
Well, I mean, and this is something you may have some insight into, but there is there's basically the obese mind. I mean, obesity affects our brain in many
Yeah,
negative ways, and the fact that it impedes our cognition, it impedes our ability to perform new neural connections.
yeah,
It sort of destabilizes our emotional control. It leads to be more impulsive. Obviously, chronically, it can lead to things like dementia and mood disorders and depression and
yeah,
so on and so forth. So it's that's a real part of it. I mean, people will often say, "Well, obesity has it's irrelevant to this stuff," but it does impact a lot more than just your physical health. It affects your mental function, and
yeah.
there's secondarily the way you interact with society in many ways.
Well, I've even got some chapters on hormones. You get in the hormone downward spiral where you've got leptin and ghrelin and everything just screaming at you, go and eat rubbish. Whereas once you get your insulin down and you get those down, you don't have that kind of desire like you're on drugs.
So you said you went vegan back years ago for a period of
Yeah.
time, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. You kind of slowly ramped up the meat now to a more of a carnivorous approach. How did vegan treat you? And what was a driving reason for that? And how long did you do it? And what were the results?
Well, it was kind of one of those post-cancer things where everybody's going, oh, you've got to go vegan and be plant-based, and, the meat's bad for you. That's probably why you got cancer and all that kind of crap. I think I got the normal initial felt better because I'd stopped eating junk. But because I'd started training, I rapidly noticed I just didn't have any energy, and I had nothing. And that was part of what kept driving me to, because I hadn't done a marathon and I hadn't done an Ironman, and I decided I'm going to do them. So that level of commitment's quite high. So I quite quickly found the nutrition just wasn't there, particularly around protein. Yeah, so I kind of self-debunked it through actual testing.
Well, I mean, and this is always interesting when I talk to people that have done both vegan and carnivore, because obviously two ends of the spectrum,
Yeah,
and they have a valid, at least N=1 comparison. And most
yeah.
people will say that carnivore was clearly superior. I mean, what has been your experience?
Oh, there's absolutely no comparison. In fact, carnivore even versus keto, I just notice as I get more carnivore, just so many details. Like my hair color has kind of come back. When I train, I basically can't get sore. It's bizarre, and I'm 57 going on 58. I'm in better shape than I've been in my whole life, including when I was endurance training. Yeah, I've got a couple of friends that had extreme eczema, and it's not just the training, it's all the other benefits. So a friend of mine, ironically, her name's Kano. We call her Carnivore. She's Japanese. She had irreparable eczema all over her body, and she wouldn't even come out of the house. And she did carnivore for 6 months, and she's completely cured. Like, she's glowing, you know. So it's not a little bit better. It's just demonstrably, I don't even know how to call the factor of it. And then the calmness I have, because my hormones are being calmed down. I don't have loads of insulin. I don't have ghrelin. I don't have leptin telling me I'm starving to death. You just get on with your life. It's, it feels normal. Yeah.
Well, that's good for sure. So
Yeah.
you said that, you were prompted to write a book because you wanted to, I guess, make a difference in somehow. I mean, what was the message you're trying to communicate with folks with your book?
Well, I'm trying to give them more of a macro view. So if I was going to say do carnivore diet, I just would have called it the carnivore diet. But what I found was when I was talking to people, for me, the analogy is, you have a 1 to 10 level of a topic you're talking about. So say conspiracy theory. A lot of conspiracy theories have come true recently, but, one of them is that we've got aliens. Now, I'm pretty happy to sort of go a lot of places, but I notice my brain, when somebody mentions aliens, it just turns off. It just goes, it's too far. And what I found was, for a lot of people, when I talk to them about carnivore, and the same with my friends, and in fact, a lot of the community, when we talk about carnivore and meat and, plants are trying to kill you, it's like their brain goes, it's too far, and just shuts down, and we can't even have a conversation. So the idea of the book is to help pace them through understanding, don't be attached to it. You're fat. You were told a whole bunch of lies. That's okay. Exercise isn't for losing weight. And when you get to the diet, I take them through all the macronutrients. And it's interesting because I've got it just here. I got a review on my book, and it's a 4-star review, and the guy hates me, but he said, I totally disagree with your biased view, and I was going to give you a 1 star, but because I was so balanced and I did cover all the diets, I go through vegan right through to carnivore, and the resources in the back, and there is a workbook. He said, I have to give you a 4 because that's actually really good, and it's made me rethink some of his thinking. So, I've just nudged him another notch along the track. So I guess if I can help nudge people to the point they can hear you or better, or they can hear Max, or they can hear the other influences, that's my goal, really. Because it's quite a big jump for some, they think, you got to have fiber and you got to have vegetables, and meat's going to give you cancer. It's a lot of brainwashing to undo.
Yeah. There's definitely some strongly held beliefs about a lot of things. The essentiality of and the superiority of vegetables, for instance. That is the holy grail, yeah. And if only we could aspire to eat more and more vegetables, we would attain ultimate health. And
yeah,
I do think that when it comes to obesity, eating a bunch of vegetables and primary vegetables will result in weight loss, but it's not necessarily optimal nourishment. I mean, it just results in you being, relatively, thin. Some people say, well, you just eat enough protein to counteract that, and there's some, I guess, some value in that, but it's not, anyway. Obviously, I'm biased on what I think nutrition is about and what it's for.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing carnivore now?
I've been doing carnivore for 2 years.
Okay. And what have you discovered? You said it was better than keto even. So what have you discovered with it?
A lot of improvement in my training. So my strength, muscle growth. But I think the biggest thing was the joints. So I don't have any joint pain. And I had that at my age. You're starting that niggly, things start getting niggly, all your mates are niggly. All of that just went away. So even long-term niggly pain in my knee or something just gone. So feels probably ironic, but I feel like I've got a 30-year-old body, not a 57-year-old body. My hormones, so my brain is, I don't get afternoon tiredness. I feel much more clear. Yeah, and I don't have food's not some kind of drug dealer, waiting for me. Food's I control food, not food controls me. So I don't feel. I mean, I used to feel like I had to have stashes of stuff around in case I would get hungry, or what am I going to have next, and when's lunch coming, etc. That just doesn't come along. And in some ways, I don't know, maybe it's a bloke thing, but it's much easier because I kind of know what I'm going to eat. I don't have this. I think it's harder for foodies, but I don't have this big, oh my God, I'm going to have to get all these ingredients. And even shopping, I mean, people say it's more expensive. I don't think it's more expensive at all because I don't waste anything. I eat everything I buy. And you can buy meat in bulk. I butcher that myself. And yeah, I just find it easier, cheaper. It's literally better, faster, stronger. It does what it says on the tin.
Because you're in New Zealand, how is carnivore received where you are? I mean, is it considered, because I know New Zealand has in recent times was really invested in sort of green, policies. I know there's never been the nuclear policy has always been no nuclear stuff in New Zealand when I lived there. And what's the latest climate like in New Zealand with regard to nutrition?
I would say there's tension because of our farming history and the fact a lot of our GDP comes from farming, it's hard for it to get fully bagged, because there's a DNA in New Zealand of sheep farming and beef farming and export. It's a big part of our country and our GDP. There's also quite a strong carnivore community here. It's interesting. New Zealand Beef and Lamb, which is the government body, they're still very on the fence. So I think we're kind of halfway there. There's a lot of brainwashed people, but I think being a primary industry producer and it being one of our biggest exports, it's still positive. And if I look in the grocery, supermarket or whatever you guys call them, the meat section's huge. So, and with all the fake stuff come and gone.
Yeah, I mean, when I lived in New Zealand, I mean, I just remember all these beautiful green hills and pastures and rolling. I mean, it's ideally set up for grazing animals, particularly sheep. As you guys know, there's 60 million sheep in that country, or maybe more. 20 sheep for every person or something like that. It's some crazy amount. So.
Yeah, and it's again same for beef. We've got some fantastic beef, especially South Island grass-fed, and it's got more expensive, but it's not crazy expensive. And we know what we're getting. There isn't corn-fed beef here. There aren't big beef lots. It's all farm grown. So I think we're in okay shape. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the plant-based craziness has sort of run its course, and I think people are starting to come to their senses and realize that was just a sort of an aberration. Sort of population was temporarily drunk on stupidity, and now people.
There's a bit of it in the last few years.
Yeah. So now some of that's hopefully turning around a little bit. I mean, we're seeing a shift in the world in general about a lot of things. But what do you find? So I always like to ask people when I'm talking to them about carnivore, because we always hear a lot of good things. Obviously I do, but to be fair, I say, have there been negatives? And some people say, no, it's been fine. I haven't had any. Some people have, this was on balance. I mean, what are the, if you weigh the pros and the cons, what are the pros? What are the cons for you?
Yeah.
I guess start with the cons.
Well, it's mainly pros. I mean, the only cons I had were Joe Rogan talked about it on one of his podcasts, which was he needed a new definition for diarrhea because it was so bad that he hadn't experienced it before. So I think when you're having that oxalate dumping and you're getting, you're fully transitioning, you can have some interesting bowel movements. The only other one would be is the foodie thing. So I've had to adjust to eating a more normalized, regular type of food, and I don't get some of the variety I used to. And some of it's social, so it's quite hard if I go to a restaurant or I go to a friend's place for dinner, because I have to kind of manage what I have, around not offending them, but also sort of manage it. So I'll sometimes eat my dinner before I go, and then they don't notice, and I just pick away. But to be honest, very low downsides. It's one of the, when I said that it does what it says on the tin, there aren't many things you do in life where you really go, this is the real deal. It does what you expect, and quite consistently I found as well, because a lot of people go, oh, we're all so super unique and everybody's got to have a million different variations. Most of the people I know, they do carnivore, and then you kind of get your natural body back, like whatever your natural body is, you get that shape and you get that health back. It's quite miraculous, really.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have, like you mentioned, you feel like you're younger, and I've had a lot of people say that, hey, they just feel like they've taken years off their life, and it's just, it's not necessarily you're aging backwards, or maybe you just lifted that veil of disease that kind of overlays so many of us, and we can actually feel what our true age might actually be. I know for me, I mean, it's allowed me to, perform at a much higher level than I otherwise thought I would have been able to, even compared to where I was in my 40s. Now in my, like I said, I'm 58, so we're the same age basically. And as I approach 60, I'm doing stuff I couldn't do in my 40s, it's pretty cool. So I mean, that's a good thing. So what do you consume on a daily basis?
I don't tend to have breakfast, not through, I just don't feel hungry. So my main meal will be dinner, which would be beef steak. Sometimes I have found I quite often like to have like a sausage or some chicken. Like if I can get 3 things on the plate, I feel like I'm having a meal. It satisfies my kind of foodie brain rather than just meat. And lunch is a lot of eggs, tuna, bacon, eggs. Yeah, I mean, it's steak, bacon, eggs, fish, basically. And I try, and trick myself to having a 3-course meal because I've got three kinds of meat on the plate.
Well, fair enough. I mean, they're different. I mean, it's surprising. I mean, you think about it, it's somewhat restrictive, but I mean, there are literally thousands of ways you can have meat prepared, and different varieties and cuts and preparations, and so you can deal, if you're kind of a foodie person, there's a lot of ways. Some people are creative and they mix ingredients together and they make pork crusted chicken breast and fried in tallow or something like that. So there's ways you can add more variety.
And also, like all this food I would have considered it treat food. Like it would have been the kind of food, I'll only have that kind of steak when I go to a restaurant, or you only have that kind of chicken on a special occasion. Because I feel like I'm having special food every day, so I don't feel like I'm missing out because I'm eating my favorite food every day. That's my kind of reframe on it.
Yeah, somebody asked me about a cheat meal, and I said, I eat ribeye steak every day. I mean, it's like every meal is a cheat meal for me, kind of in some capacity. I mean, because it's, it's not sugary, it's not like chocolate cake, but it's
a treat.
It's still decadent. I mean, it's still like, this is viscerally very much satisfying to me. And so I certainly enjoy that. So do you have people around you that are or skeptical of what you're doing? I mean, they would have seen you. Maybe people you've known for years have seen you go. Now he's doing the crazy vegan thing. Now he's doing the crazy vegetarian. Now he's on this crazy. What has been the response to the people around you?
They were all kind of on board while I was doing the accepted, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. I think paleo was more acceptable because Pete Evans was quite a big kind of figure, Australia, New Zealand, and he travelled a lot here, and he's quite a popular chef. Keto, that's pretty popular here, but your carnivore, they just really struggle despite the results. And I think that's the interesting part that I'm trying to bridge with the book and talking with people is pacing and leading them to, it's going to take them a while to get there, because some of the programming on the plant stuff is so strong that, they've had decades of being told. I mean, a lot of them still think the food pyramid makes sense. And I'm like, well, if you just look at it, it's basically 80% carbohydrates. So, you're destined to be fat as.
What is going on in New Zealand, by the way, with regard to health? Are you seeing an increase in obesity rates, or what's going
massive
on?
Increase. Yeah, I was talking with my friend today. We're just, everybody's a fatty. Supermarket or grocery store, the entire middle is basically sugar. I was in hospital recently, and I'd had to take a picture of my breakfast because it was 100% sugar in a hospital. It was like oats with sugar, with toast, with sweet jam, with tea, with sugar in it, with, yogurt riddled with sugar, and fruit salad, which was just, sugary fruit in sugar syrup. And I'm in a hospital. I'm like, what the hell? So we've definitely got an obesity problem. We've got Australia and New Zealand. We're quite close to America in terms of, how we eat and some of the brands over here. So we've definitely got an epidemic problem. I mean, it's part of what I'm trying to do is be part of the community here and kind of make that stand and, be the light for people to see. So be the change. And that's what I'm doing with my friends, is just, keeping up, going. I mean, I wrote this book to try and save one of my best friend's lives because he's morbidly obese and so he's already had a stroke. So
Wow.
it's still a challenge for him, because part of the mind thing is one of the strongest things humans hang on to is their identity. So, I used to be Big Dave who worked for Heineken. So I was this big, guy and drank heaps of beer and went to parties, and I quite liked Big Dave. He was cool, but Big Dave had to die, because I couldn't be this Dave and have that entity going on. And, Marty, my friend Marty, he's Scottish, so he's Party Marty. So he's got that whole Scottish partying, drinking thing. And I've said to him, mate, Party Marty needs to die. He's not looking after you. So, I really think that's why the mind parts, if people can't get their head in the game, if they either don't believe us or it's too much of a shock or they're too attached to their current identity, they just carry on with the propaganda that, I'll keep eating, basically a very high carbohydrate diet. Yeah. And getting fatter and fatter.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that identity to some degree because I've always been, since I've been basically an adult, a big, strong guy. That's just me. And I would have a really hard time not being that. It would just be, you're comfortable in your, in your habits and what you've built around you and how you perceive yourself. And then when you totally change that, it's gotta be disconcerting. And, for some reason, like I said, obviously if you're morbidly obese and you're used to being the big guy, that's something, but that's not necessarily healthy for you. And so, I mean, but it's still got to be a challenge to go that way. So you'd mentioned, I think what were there was 3 pillars. It was nutrition and mind. And was the other one physical activity? Was that I can't remember.
So you got mind, body and diet. So in body, I cover, because a lot of people have this obsession. I've got to do masses of high intensity cardio and bleed from my eyeballs, and I've got to do 6 hours a day, and people just don't want to do that. So I start off on the body part and, initially going, you don't exercise to lose weight because everybody has that kind of that fallacy that, oh, if I keep exercising, it's like, well, no, if you don't have your diet right, it just won't work. And then also, I mean, some of the reviews, people have said, oh, thank God somebody said we don't have to kill ourselves. So I talk about, what do you actually want? You know, what sort of level of body fat do you want to get? Because not everybody wants to be 8% body fat ripped, or has the wherewithal to get there. You know, it's quite difficult. But so I even got some custom hand-drawn pictures of men and women and all the different percentage body weights, just so people could go, oh yeah, okay, you know, so for a guy being 15, that's pretty good, 15 to 20. And, you know, women are obviously different. And then I go through, you know, low intensity exercise, walking is fantastic. And then also, you know, resistance training. But if people just walked 30 minutes a day, that would make a humongous difference in their life.
Yeah, I think that going from sedentary to being active is the biggest changer. I mean, anything beyond that, the returns become diminishing, and certainly competing at a world-class level as athleticism can sometimes be negative. I mean, depending upon what you have to take out to achieve that. And there's certainly, I mean, it's not to say that every world-class athlete is physically and mentally broken, but many of them are. And I think there's, you know, like I said, there's sometimes extreme things that are done to achieve those results. I mean, I know, because over the years I've competed at a really high level, and I, you know, I've never resorted to drugs or anything like that, but I mean, I've put my body through some extreme stuff, some of which probably was net negative, you know. Now, I mean, even though I still like performing at a high level, I'm a little more, I guess, careful on how I portion it out. And I do think intensity is important. I think I personally, I'll give you my philosophy on this. I think achieving a high ceiling and touching that from time to time is important. It's important to run your, you know, rev your engine to its top. You don't want to run there all the time, but you need to touch it from time to time so you maintain that. Otherwise, you know, you build up rust. You know, it's better to burn out than to rust out, as people like to say. You know?
Yeah. I guess that's part of the giving people permission. They don't have to be a triathlete or an endurance, or, you know, just get moving. Because it's that progress too. Once you start thinking better and you start moving better and you start eating better, it's that virtuous circle, because then you come around and you start, you know, because I enjoy what I do now. I enjoy exercise. I enjoy eating. And I enjoy the difference it's made for me mentally, because I'm very, you know, my body feels calm now. I just go through the day calm. I know what I'm going to eat. I know how I'm going to feel, so I can concentrate on other things in my life, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. So the book, is the book out for publication now, or is it preprint, or where is it at? What's the status?
It's on Amazon. It's been out since November. And yeah, it comes with a 80-page workbook. That's part of my coaching training. So, and it's designed to be handwritten. So if you handwrite information, you have 25% better retention. But the big kicker is, if you have exercises, what I call activation, it's a 75% improvement. So there's little worksheets on each part of the book to help people, you know, come up with their 4 big whys, and then come up with their exercise plan, and then understand what kind of diet. You know, there's even a diet choosing selector. And, you know, this guy who sort of said, I wanted to give you a 1-star, but I gave you a 4-star because I gave him space to make his own choice. So he didn't like me, but he thought the book was good.
Fair enough. That's probably true criticism, or a true compliment, one way or the other. But let me ask you this, because as I attempt to, you know, develop my level of knowledge in all these different various areas outside of what I was an expert in. I was an expert in orthopedic surgery. Yeah. I've got some level of expertise in sports performance, as being a, you know, kind of a world champion athlete over the years. But I'm looking at all these other things, and some of these aspects, you know, like things as they pertain to sports. But I wonder if there's, I mean, like within, there's like activation sequences you can do to sort of prime your muscles so they work more effectively when you work out. Is there anything analogous like that for the brain? Let's say you've got a very challenging business, because you come from this background, I assume you got a challenging business meeting coming up, and you want to be at your mental sharpest. I mean, outside of taking beta blockers and slugging caffeine, which some people might do, are there things you can do to prime your brain for performance? I don't know. I'm just going on a limb here that you might know something about this.
Yeah, no. So the idea of the part of the mind diet. So the two components are your identity, because if you can't change that, that's just going to push you back. You're going to unconsciously drift back to where you were. But the big part is building big enough whys so that, and they have to be emotionally connected. So the real lever in your brain is emotions. There'll be certain songs you remember in your life, but you'll remember them because you were at a concert or you're with some particular friends. There'll be an emotional reason that you remember that song, and you can probably even sing the words. Whereas you will have listened to a million other songs and they just sort of went in and didn't stick. So connecting things to emotion gives you leverage. So in my opinion is you need the leverage. It needs to become an embedded emotional leverage, not I'm going to turn it on for this meeting. Because like Carnivore, once you're doing it, you're doing it. It's a lifestyle. So the same thing around my mental state now is I'm very clear on what I'm doing and what I'm not going to do, because I've got the emotional story of, I'm trying to save my friend's life. I'm trying to be part of this community. So it just makes it much easier. And you can, when I coach people through this stuff, I can literally see their face and behavior change, because they'll go through, say, 20 reasons why, and you'll go, not there. And then they'll suddenly say, it's because, I really want to see my kids grow up. And you'll see this whole shift in their body, like that just landed, and they never forget that, because that's the emotional trigger. Whereas they could have said, I want to, look good. So that would be my call on mental stuff, all about emotional trigger.
And defining your why, as some people might say, something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, I do 4 whys, so that you've got a defense fortress. So you don't just have one wall. So when stuff comes at you, you kind of go, I've got 4 different ways of avoiding it, because your mind and people will do stuff to trick you into giving up.
Yeah, it's interesting. You read about or see about stories of people that just did whatever it takes, and they go through horrible things that many people say, I would never be able to do that, and yet these people somehow summon the courage and the desperation, perhaps, to do these things. It's like you see some guy that sawed his own arm off to get to escape from being trapped in the ice or something like that. It's like,
I mean, if you've got a big enough why, you'll do anything. Yeah, but often it's the people lift cars to get their children out from underneath, and it's impossible. But it's the emotional. Everything almost always relates back to the emotional trigger, because if you don't have an emotional trigger, it's just whatever.
Yeah, it's amazing what we are capable of when we allow it.
And I mean, I'm going to tell you, it's quite humbling when you're coaching someone and you see them have a shift, because it's a permanent shift. It doesn't get undone. They realize that, wow, this has landed. Quite a few get quite emotional about going, and then because that's an emotional trigger, it's then in the memory. It doesn't go away. It's like that favorite song. Anytime they come back to it, it's like, that's on. I'm not doing that. I'm not having that beer. I'm not having that carbs or whatever, because I've got a bigger reason.
Let me go back to that. You mentioned, you got a guy that was going to give you a 1 score, and he bumped it up to 4 because you had flexibility and you had, determine what diet is right for you, an algorithm in your book somehow. How does one, in the context of your book, decide they're going to go on a vegan diet? I mean, how would that work to that you say, I recommend you do a vegan diet? How does that work for you?
I mean, I don't.
Okay.
What I've tried to do is I have a table with all the kind of macronutrient combinations you could come up with, and then I go, right, so if this is the combination, this would equal this kind of diet, and these would be the outcomes. So the challenge is they could still do it, but it's like, okay, well, that's going to be your outcome. It's not optimal. Whereas the only two diets that really have optimal outcomes based on all the science are pretty much, carnivore and keto. So I'm trying to lead and pace them as opposed to tell them, and then if they don't like it, I mean, this guy said, look, I just can't agree with you. That's okay. He's not there. Maybe he'll never be there. But he said, I do appreciate the process you took me through.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think that's all you can really ask for. So that's pretty cool that he's willing to do that. So now that you've written your book, are you taking time to going back to your regular type of activities, or?
I'm doing going back to a bit of work. My next project is I want to start taking some of the book and putting it onto a YouTube channel. So I'm thinking of doing the whole resource section, making that a online resource so people can actually go through and understand. This is very, how would you say it, non-opinionated. So this is what macronutrients are and this is what they do, so that they can actually make their own decisions. Because I think a lot of them don't. They just have all this hearsay about what things are, and it's actually not true. And I'm also working on an online course which would have all the exercises on video, and I would take them through them, because the activation part is the piece where people really start to get the shift and the aha moments.
So this is a mind activation, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, mind and emotion. So, giving them enough information and pacing it so they can take it in, because it's when you go from, say, a standard diet or a vegetarian diet and you talk about carnivore, it's too big a leap for their brain. It just goes into cognitive dissonance and it goes, I can't listen. So the idea is to try and pace them, and that resource would let them kind of watch it, and because people can shift and people can change. I mean, I've changed and shifted, and I've seen a lot of people, but it's a challenge when you've got an identity and you've got a industrial machine that's been telling us what we're supposed to eat for the last 50 years.
Yeah, no doubt. That's definitely happened. So, well, just anything else that we did not discuss that you think is germane or important, either for your book or anything you want to communicate?
My only questions for you is there any way I can help you, work with you, or any part of your organization? Because it's quite a mission for me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like with regard to Revero, I mean, we're a U.S. based company, so right now all of our people that work for us are in the U.S. I mean, obviously, we just talking about it is helpful, trying to get that concept out there. I mean, I think if we look at healthcare, I mean, healthcare, the healthcare model that we're used to is unsustainable, not for the reasons that you would think. I mean, yeah, no, it's not sustainable to have all these chronically ill people and you just medicate them. I think that's not true. I don't think it's sustainable, but I think that's the model we're going to continue to see. It's just going to be more streamlined and more efficient. AI will will replace a lot of the providers, because it's just more efficient for them to do so. I mean, the United States House of Representatives currently has a bill under consideration to allow AI to write prescriptions. So if you remove the physician from the equation, then it just becomes direct to consumer, drug to consumer with just a little bit of a robotic interface, which is a lot cheaper, more people on drugs. That will save healthcare dollars, quite honestly, but it's just going to keep more people sick. And so the other model would be let's address the root cause. Let's do with more than just more pills and more procedures. So that's my mission, is to be on that second boat rather than the first one there. But I mean, as far as, acutely, it's hard to do things outside of the U.S. just because, like, if we were to set up business in New Zealand, we've got a whole new set of laws and regulations and requirements and licensings. And then certainly if you go to a country that doesn't speak English, now you got to build an entire
Yeah.
think another language and all the cultural differences and all that stuff. So it's going to be a while before we are able to venture overseas, if ever. I don't know. I mean, we'll send it depends on, assuming we're successful in the U.S., which I'm optimistic and very, very bullish on, but we'll see what happens over time.
Is there any way I could do anything, remotely? Because the time zone's not too bad from here.
I don't know. I like I said, we have coaches that, all of our coaching staff has a Bachelor of Science of some sort or some sort of health related undergraduate degree, just because of some of the medical stuff we have to be engaged with. There's some requirements for that. So never know. But I mean, we have sales positions, and this time will go on. I mean, you'll have to obviously, you live on the other side of the world, so it's a long journey to consider that. But anyway, well, I'll tell you what, David, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I do have this is my 4th of 5 podcasts. I got to go do my 5th podcast today. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you.